It's rare that the bar almost makes a sentence here. The bar at the bottom there says, Biden health polling. Those are the
anti-Semitism, Brian Stelter.
those stop making sense, but Biden, because of his health, is polling so terribly. And so that is the thing that's going to keep coming in. So let's move on to the latest discussion of the reality of the substance that we're talking about. Yeah. We can play this first clip. This is a neurologist talking about the condition that is, Biden's age, basically. Let's roll that.
You noticed anything that gives you a red flag as a doctor?
Oh, yeah, I see him 20 times a day in clinic. I mean, it's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word-finding difficulties, and that's not, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area.
He's also overcome stuttering, though. Could that be part of that, too?
No, this is not a palatal issue or a speech discrepancy, which is very different from a lemino dysfunction, actual word retrieval, where you pick a similar question or talk around the issue, plus the rigidity, monotone voice.
Wait, go back to that, the rigidity. What do you mean?
Rigidity, loss of arm swing, standing up lordotically. You notice when he turns, it's kind of end block turning. It's not a quick turn. So that's one of the hallmarks of Parkinson's is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold, hypophonia. A small monotone voice like this over time is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
It's very hard to diagnose Parkinson's, isn't it? It's not simple. I mean, I've heard that it can be.
It's one of the easier movement disorders to diagnose, actually.
Right,
but it's so clinic. There's very little other. And I'm a Democrat. I always say about this.
Right.
It's just like this guy is not a hard case.
But I've had relatives who have gone through neurological issues, and I've heard that sometimes Parkinson's is not very easy to nail. You have to take a lot of tests.
It's early on. If you're just presented with like hallucinations, that could be a variety of things, or just the cognitive problems. That could be Alzheimer's versus Parkinsonism, and that becomes a little nebulous. But once you start manifesting the hallmark motor symptoms,
right?
Slow movement, rigidity, mass facies, hypophonia. I mean, if a med student did not pick Parkinson's on the test, they'd be remediated.
So let me ask you, you're a Democrat, you're a doctor. You sound like you're frustrated with what the White House is saying.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because, I'm an American before everything. And I look at it and say, when I used to see Russia, Soviet Union, North Korea, when they just make outrageous things, like when North Korea can't keep the lights on and they say, it was some faulty power thing. I kind of hate that kind of stuff. They had 4 years. My own party had 4 years to find, this was a wreck in slow motion. And they had 4 years to find out of 350 Americans, one person that could take the place. And here we are the day before school trying to do the homework and replace a guy who's got a neurodegenerative disease.
Pretty incredible when you look at that list of symptoms.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really hard to diagnose. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah, and the NBC anchor sort of being like, he overcame a stutter, right? Could that have anything to do with him saying we beat Medicare?
And I'm push back,
Oh, sure.
Go ahead. But yes, it's like, it's pretty clear at this point that he's got a neurodegenerative condition. I loved his line about if you showed somebody with these symptoms on this test and they did not identify this very common and famous condition, that they would be remediated.
Right, that it's actually not, when you have all of this example of Biden, all these examples of Biden walking and talking and interacting with other people over the course of years, which we do because he was running for president and he is now the president of the United States. It's not as though there's a dearth of available examples of his issues. I mean, we've seen it publicly. We saw 2 hours of it or an hour and a half of it in the debate itself. Just a 20-minute interview with George Stephanopoulos unedited. You could see all of that there. And so his name is Dr. Tom Pitts. He's a neurologist. That was an interview on, I think, NBC News Now from Monday that started to really get traction yesterday. And I think one of the reasons it does because he's like relaxed and confident. He's taking a really difficult position. Again, it shouldn't be a difficult position. But when you go out publicly and do that, it's not like when you had doctors left and right, I don't mean that politically, but coming out of the woodwork to diagnose Donald Trump with something during that 25th Amendment conversation that was spawned by the anonymous letter and to the New York
Trump
Times.
Also easy to diagose. He's just got so many different things.
But do you remember how easily people were coming out and being like, oh, it's this, it's that.
The Atlantic had like 30 different like therapists or something do it like on the cover of their thing, I think in like 2017 or something. Yeah, it was,
Which,
that was the big thing that the liberal press loved to do, is put Trump on the couch.
And, you know, for doctors, people who run in circles of the affluent and the educated, coming out against Donald Trump is a badge of honor. That's socially a popular thing to do. For Biden, it's a little bit different. I mean, I think most of the country is with Dr. Pitts here, but it's still coming out against the sitting president of the United States, who is clinging to power, even in some corridors of his own party. Nancy Pelosi has said, I'm not ready to make a statement, even though she said it's a fair question whether it's an episode or a broader condition. And Ryan, my biggest frustration in the last couple of weeks has been how political, how like obsessively fixated on politics we are in the aftermath of that debate, instead of saying, this is the man who currently has a nuclear code.
There's that.
He's the president. It's not a conversation about whether he should be running for president. It's a conversation about whether he should be president. And we're not, whether he should be president right now. Yeah. And you hardly ever hear that come up.
Right.
That's why we put polling third in the show. Yeah. Because as important as it is to the question of who's the president 2 weeks from now, as these decisions are being made, it tells you what people really care about. What the oligarchy really cares about is having someone they can prop up, actually like a Soviet leader, and they can sort of extract resources from, extract influence from, and continue on with their lives.
And the other point to that, in that direction, is that it does seem like Biden is close to a 0% chance of winning, but people really hate Trump. There is even a chance that like a comatose Biden could somehow snatch a victory. And then you've got 4 years of that concern. Like right now, we have to get through January.
Yeah, it's a crazy bet to make.
Like the idea that you're going to just keep rolling those dice, and keep playing the game. By the way, the stiff arm line was really interesting to me because at the June, so the moment where everything just completely broke for my wife was the Juneteenth dance,
the freeze
thing, where she would. I think she would kind of abandon him a while ago, but she doesn't watch the show, so I can talk about it. Everybody would come over to her house, she'd show him this video, be like, "Did you see the Juneteenth thing?" And it's crazy. Yeah. It's like, what is going on here? And without a medical background, like we don't know how to diagnose something like that, but knowing that is like a hallmark of kind of accelerated Parkinsonism or Parkinson's it's like, oh, okay, now that's starting to make sense, because you could just tell that like there was something about the body movements.
Yeah, it's off.
That was just off. Yeah.
And really powerful to look at clips of him from 2020. And I know we've talked about that. We showed it when we were on with Crystal and Sagar Monday, the difference between Biden and 2020. Now, Biden, I think, was still bad in 2020. He was saying things that made no sense occasionally. He was just losing words, all of those different things. And we know that this happens over time. But he is so incredibly diminished, physically diminished, mentally diminished, that the fact that he is currently running to serve for president 4 more years is terrifying. But what's much more terrifying is that he is the current president of the United States. There are 2 hot wars. There's brewing conflict all over the world. And the American people are just losing confidence in all of their institutions, rightfully so. I don't think we should have high institutional confidence right now. But this is the president of the United States who is, again, I think of people whose kids are serving overseas, who are, the family of people who were killed in Jordan. This is immediate. Yeah. It is not about an election. This is about something much deeper. And this had happened. They had Dr. Pitts on in light of the story that Parkinson's expert had visited the White House some 8 times, I believe, since 2022, which we've talked about before. But this is now spiraling into a cover-up story. Because the White House is saying they can't have that conversation about who he was there to visit because of medical privacy, which is actually a real thing. You can imagine, though, that they would be less concerned about medical privacy if it was someone other than the president. They would say it was a low-level staffer, et cetera. It was a family member, et cetera. So that's another huge, huge concern for Biden, for Kamala Harris, for the entire Democratic Party going forward, too.
And because this is such a degenerative condition, and because we are seeing him decline in real time, there's actually a way out of that cover-up story for Democrats that is a little bit less dishonest. It's still dishonest, but it's less dishonest, which would be to say, okay, look, he got a lot worse.
Yeah,
and
which we've heard some people say.
Like we weren't, and it does look like he got worse.
Yeah.
Now, you can then argue, well, we think he was actually already bad enough, say a year ago, that you should have seen this coming. But then you're in a different debate. You can say, okay, he's stepping aside because his condition has degenerated so much. But either way, the media is just going to keep hammering at him. Here's Jake Tapper with a pretty brutal little segment.
In reality, 72% of voters say that they believe President Biden is too old. That's according to CNN's most recent polling. Voters have been saying this for quite a long time. The reality is that the Democratic elites are mostly late to acknowledge these age and ability issues compared to the rest of the public. The elites have been forced to reckon with it after the debate just 11 days ago.
Look at my career. I've not had many of those nights. It was a terrible night, and I really regret it happened. But the fact of the matter is, how can you assure you're going to be on faith.can intervene on your way to go to, work tomorrow? Age wasn't, the idea I'm too old.
The fact of the matter is, how can you assure you're going to be out on your way to go, work tomorrow? Age wasn't, the idea that I'm too old. Keep in mind, that soundbite is supposed to be reassuring to those Democratic supporters who have gone wobbly. Many Democratic officials with whom I've spoken are worried that President Biden and his family and his inner circle appear to be in complete denial, not just about whatever might be wrong with him, but the state of his candidacy right now.
So credit where it's due. I always find it insufferable when Jake Tapper, that quote from Joe Biden that he just read off from the Morning Joe interview, you could have done that 1 year ago. You could have done that with Biden quotes 2 years ago.
In fact, we did, basically.
We did. Yes. Absolutely, we did. And so the adaptation of this, or the adoption of this sanctimonious posturing now is grating, I think. And that clip was circulating yesterday.
Let's see what Stelter will say later about
good point.
The evolution here at his old network.
It's a great point.
He's a good friend. I'm sure they're buddies.
I'm sure they are.
I'm sure they had tensions too, though.
I'm sure. I believe that. But the back patting on that was frustrating. It's been frustrating the media more broadly, which we'll talk about later in the show. Most importantly, as Biden is concerned, though, this is not going away, because that is a hard stance. That is a hard line for Jake Tapper, a CNN anchor, to get out there with right now. He's not going to walk that back if Biden has a good week. Nobody is walking this back if Biden does a good press conference the next day. They'll say Biden did a good press conference, but they're not going to be like, I was wrong again. Throw it all away. This guy's clearly fine. It's not happening.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.